everyone, welcome back to week 2 of The Greatest Man. We ask that this week you take time out of your week to call 1 or 2 people in your group who doesn't need a little encouragement. Life is so much better when we're connected. Let's go now to Pastor Tim.
When it comes to Jesus, it seems like everybody's kind of a fan. I mean, there are a lot of people who don't believe that there's a God, but you're not going to run into a whole lot of people who don't believe that there's a Jesus. And there are whole communities online and in real life that are committed to hating religion, but you don't find a whole lot of groups of people who are committed to hating Jesus. It just seems like no matter how we divide ourselves up, whether it be politically, socioeconomics, race, gender, best ice cream flavor, mint chocolate chip. No matter how we divide ourselves up, we all sort of think Jesus is on our side. We all like Jesus. We all feel good about Jesus. And so people come up with different theories about why he came and what he was doing here and what his purpose really was. Like there are people who say, well, Jesus was just a really great moral teacher and he just came to really teach us a new way and to enlighten us. Or there are people who say, well, Jesus came to start a love revolution and show us how life is better if we all just love each other and got along and we could all live our best life. And then still, there are others who would say, no, Jesus came to be a really great religious leader and an example to us of what it means to follow God. Well, while Jesus may have done some or all of those things, I don't think that's why he would say he came. None of those are Jesus's stated purpose for coming. Jesus, in fact, when asked why he had come or why he was here, what his purpose was, he had some pretty bold things to say. Jesus said he existed before Abraham in John 8:58. Jesus claimed that he and his Father are one in John 10:30. He said that he is equal to the Father in John 5:17 and 18. And Jesus also claimed to have power and authority that only God has. He said that he has the authority to judge the nations in Matthew 25:31 through 46. He claimed the authority to raise people from the dead in John 5:25 through 29. And Jesus said that he could forgive sins in Mark 2:5 through 7. Jesus told his followers that he could answer their prayers in John 14:13 through 14. And he promised that he would be with his followers always in Matthew 28:20. Additionally, in John 16:15, Jesus said, all that belongs to the Father is mine. And as we discovered last week in John 14:6, Jesus said that he alone has the power to save. He put it this way, I am the way, the truth, and the life, and no one comes to the Father except through me. And just to be clear, Jesus is claiming to be God. In all of those statements, he is claiming that while he is fully a man, he is fully God. And everybody knew what he meant. There was no misreading this. There was no misconception. Nothing was lost in translation. When Jesus said he was God to the first audience that heard him, that's what they knew he meant. For example, when Jesus goes to the funeral of his friend Lazarus and he's talking with Lazarus' sister, he says it this way, John 11:25. And Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die. And whoever lives by believing in me will never die. And then he asked her, do you believe this? And in John 11:27, she says, yes, Lord. I believe that you are the Messiah, the Son of God, who is to come into the world. She understood what he was saying, that he was claiming to be God, and she believed it. Not only that, but his disciples, those that spent most of their time with Jesus, that knew him really, really well, they were asked by Jesus, hey, who do you think I am? What do you think I'm doing here? What do you think my mission is? Who do you really believe me to be? And his friend Simon Peter puts it this way in Matthew 16:16. He says, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. So those people knew that Jesus meant to tell them he was God. That was how he identified himself. That was what he told them. And they believed it. They understood it. There wasn't any confusion. Even those who hated Jesus and tried to end his ministry because they wanted him gone, they killed him because he claimed to be God. They maybe didn't believe he was God, but they believed that he believed he was God. That's the crime they charged him with. Listen to what it says in Mark 14, verse 61. Again, the high priest asked, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am," said Jesus. "And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." The high priest tore his clothes and said, "Why do we need any more witnesses? You have heard the blasphemy. What do you think?" And they all condemned him worthy of death. Even his enemies knew Jesus was claiming to be God. Now again, they didn't maybe believe that he was God, but they knew what his claim was. That was why he was charged with blasphemy. Blasphemy was him claiming to be God, and it was punishable by death. And so while Jesus was fully man, he was claiming to be fully God. And everybody understood that that was his purpose. Everybody understood that that's what he believed about himself. So in the words of Jesus himself, he says he's God, which I know sounds crazy, right? It does sound a little bit crazy. If you're sitting in a restaurant and someone walks across the room and taps you on the shoulder and says, "Nice to meet you, I'm God," and they do nothing to show you that they are God, like they're just crazy, right? They're just a madman. It's interesting, there's this movie I like, Hoosiers. If you've not seen it, it's great. 2 thumbs up, would recommend. And in this movie, Gene Hackman is a basketball coach getting ready to take over a basketball team. So there's this conversation between the new coach and the old coach, and they don't like each other. And the old coach, George, basically they kind of get into this conversation, and George tries to like intimidate the new coach. And he says this.
"Look, mister, there's 2 kinds of dumb. Guy that gets naked and runs out in the snow and barks at the moon, and guy who does the same thing in my living room. First one don't matter, the second one you kind of forced to deal with."
And the same is true when it comes to Jesus. If someone claims to be God and shows no evidence that they are, does no signs, does no wonders, performs no miracles, does nothing to validate that, does nothing to prove that, isn't willing to sacrifice anything to let people know that that's true or that he really believes it. If that's the case, that guy is just naked barking at the moon, and we don't really have to think too much about him. But if someone claims to be God, and then they predict their own death, burial, and resurrection, and then they pull it off, well, we're kind of forced to deal with that guy. We're kind of forced to deal with the fact that while Jesus has said something that sounds pretty crazy, it might just very well be true. Because Jesus did. He said he was going to die and be crucified, and then he'd be buried, and then he would rise from the dead 3 days later, and then he did it, which forces us to deal with Jesus and to deal with the truth about who Jesus is. If we just believe that Jesus is a good moral teacher, his claim to be God contradicts that. If we claim that Jesus was just a good example of what it means to be a good person, Jesus' claim to be God contradicts that. If we believe that Jesus came just to start a love revolution so that we could live a happier life if we just all loved one another, his claim to be God undermines that completely. I want to read you something. C.S. Lewis put it this way. He said, "A man who was merely a man and said the sorts of things that Jesus said would not be a great moral teacher. He would either be a lunatic on the level with a man who says he is a poached egg, or else he would be the devil of hell. You must make your choice. Either this man was and is the Son of God, or else a madman or something worse. You can shut him up for a fool. You can spit at him and kill him as a demon, or you can fall at his feet and call him Lord and God. But let us not come with any patronizing nonsense about him being a great human teacher. He has not left that open to us. He did not intend to." Jesus' claim to be fully God and fully man forces us to deal with his claim. We can't just take him as good moral teacher. He didn't leave us any room for that. We can't just say that he was a good example. He didn't leave any room for that. He said he was God. And our response must be to fall at his feet, call him Lord, and humbly submit our whole lives to him. Is Jesus fully God and fully man? Absolutely.
As you think through who Jesus is this week, we want to encourage you to take a next step. This week, your next step might be setting aside time to talk to Jesus. Tell him what's on your heart. For those of you that may already have that time set aside each day to talk to Jesus, find someone to pray with. Whatever it is, find a way to take a next step. As we go through this series, we want to hear how this series is impacting you. So send us emails. Connect with us by emailing us at connect@northpbc.org.